the royal family, top of politics, TV news presenters. There is a network of people that endeavour to run the world, and some of the prime movers. Jeffrey Maxwell, Jean-Luc Brunel, Prince Andrew, they don't want this stuff released, Dodge.
Who's the girl who Prince Andrew had a photo with?
So Virginia was the tip of the spear out of all of the survivors. Virginia, she made 3 separate allegations against Prince Andrew. Well, why didn't they tell the police right away? If you've had something so horrific happen to you as a child, you're traumatized. So this is how sick these people are. But they're in plain sight. They're all around us at the top levels of society. And bear in mind, Trump had a relationship with Epstein that lasted over 10 years. They were gallivanting. There's photos of them together doing all kinds of stuff. They comply with what the network tells them to do.
What is that?
Do you want to...
Yeah. Oh my God. So who killed Jeffrey Epstein?
Let's look at this in a lot more detail, shall we? So...
Shaun, welcome back to the show.
God, so glad to be here, man.
Very much looking forward to this one.
Thank you.
Let's roll all the way back. Who killed Jeffrey Epstein?
So, disclaimer, viewers, there's going to be some graphic content coming up. In my theory, it is the network, and by the network, there is a network of people that worship ancient religions and incorporate secret societies that endeavour to run the world, and some of the prime movers in this network harvest the energy of children. And what I mean by that, they do the most vile defilements to these kids. I'm going to weigh my words carefully for this interview. And by breaking these kids, by shattering their innocence, they absorb that energy into themselves. And people in this network are all around us. We're talking the royal family, top of politics, TV news presenters, and when some of them are outed or threats come to them, then in the beginning they are protected. So when Jeffrey Epstein first got arrested, for example, Alexander Acosta came to his rescue in Florida and brokered what was called the sweetheart deal, whereby this monster who had been setting up a pyramid scheme in Florida at the high school, whereby girls were procured. They were told, come and give this guy a massage, you'll get $200, come to this house, he's a billionaire, trying to razzle-dazzle them with his wealth. And then these kids would come over and they would take them to the massage room, and then that would escalate into the more heinous acts that I alluded to earlier. And if the kids wouldn't comply with that, what he would do, he would give them some money and say, find another kid who will do this and bring them here, and I will give you recruitment fees. And he was so brazen, Dodge. He actually sent flowers to girls at the high school that he was procuring into this web. And like I said, he got a sweetheart deal. We interviewed one of the cops out of Florida.
So the sweetheart deal, what year are we talking here?
So the sweetheart deal, I can't remember the exact year. But it
early 2000s.
No, this was a number of years before he was unalived in 2019, I believe it was, when he got arrested the second time. Can't remember the exact year of the sweetheart deal, but even while he was on the sweetheart deal, he was still procuring more victims. He basically had the local sheriff. He was put in the stockade, for starters. He wasn't put in the general population in the jail. He had the local sheriff. The deputies were kind of screening his guests, and he donated over $100,000 to the sheriff to get this special treatment. But it was the US federal government that came in, Alexander Acosta, who's high up in the US federal government, who came in and said, we're going to give this guy a pass. He was facing decades in prison. We're just going to put him for so many months in the stockade, where he was allowed out on work release to commit more crimes.
Oh my God.
So we interviewed one of the cops from the Florida Police Department, John Mark Duggan, and he and Joseph Recurry, who was another Florida cop, when they were seizing the property from Epstein's premises, Joseph Recurry said to John Mark Duggan, if we give this to our superiors, it's not going to see the light of day.
Yeah.
Because they knew it was all going to get covered up. Joseph Recurry mysteriously dies in his 50s, completely healthy, works out, He's a good guy. And the other cop got so scared, he made some copies of the files. He fled to Russia and has never come back.
My God. So when was the time that he got nicked the second time? It was 2019.
Yeah.
What was leading up to his the old Bill grabbing him and saying, right, enough's enough, bang, prison?
All right. So what was leading up to this was some of the survivors were no longer kids and they were in their 20s. And God bless these people. For example, Virginia, who was unalived in January. The Farmer sisters, Maria Farmer, who I've interviewed, Annie Farmer, Juliet Bryan, who I've interviewed recently, and I've interviewed her mum. These survivors came of an age whereby if you've had something so horrific done to you as a kid, you're not ready to go to the cops. And this is a lot of, the people who call these survivors out, these nasty people say, well, why didn't they tell the police right away? If you've had something so horrific happen to you as a child, you're traumatized, and quite often you haven't got the tools to deal with it and the professional help, and you fall back on substances or alcohol. And it's only years later, as these girls mature into women, they realize what's happened to them, and these monsters must be held accountable. So you had people like Virginia and the Farmer sisters, lobbying, going to the police, going to the FBI over the years, talking to journalists, and putting the pressure on the government to bloody well do something about it.
Who's the girl who Prince Andrew had a photo with?
Oh my goodness, we're going to get to Virginia now then. So Virginia was the tip of the spear out of all of the survivors. And Virginia, she made 3 separate allegations against Prince Andrew. So there was the allegation that it happened in America. There was the allegation that it happened in London. And we went to that house, we doorstepped it, we filmed it, we got them to open the door, we filmed the banister, all that kind of stuff. My Epstein content, it was all banned when we originally published it. But anyway, the most monstrous allegation was on the PDF file island that he had.
And where was that? Caribbean?
Yeah, he had his plane going out to the Bahamas, the Lolita Express, and thus named after the book, about that kind of activity. So Virginia alleged that there was a, let's just say, adult party on the island, and the principals at that party were Jeffrey, Ghislaine Maxwell, who's now getting a sweetheart deal from Trump, because this is how the network works. Both sides are utilized. Republicans, Democrats have all covered this up. Jean-Luc Brunel, who was the second procurer after Ghislaine Maxwell. She was the main procurer, but Jean-Luc Brunel, he ran a modeling agency out of France, procured girls all over, the poorer countries of Europe, war-torn, whatever. He would go in, tell the families, we're going to make your daughter a top model, send her off with me. And he had a pipeline directly to America, and the feds fast-tracked these girls in, gave them passports right into Jeffrey Epstein's web. Anyway, so out there was Prince Andrew, Jean-Luc Brunel. Jean-Luc Brunel also ended up being unalived, exactly in the same method as Jeffrey in prison in France.
He was in France at the time.
When he died. Yeah, okay. We'll get to that one. Yeah. So on the island, the PDF file island, you've got Jeffrey, Maxwell, Jean-Luc Brunel, Prince Andrew. Virginia is alleging they're all involved in an adult party, that these 4 are boasting that the underage East European girls are the easiest ones to do these monstrous acts to because they don't speak any English. And Virginia also alleged that Prince Andrew was engaged in this, in the swimming pool, etc. And she also said that Jeffrey was bragging that Jean-Luc Brunel had given him a birthday present of 12-year-old triplets. And he was bragging about how good the oral skills were on these 12-year-old girls. So this is how sick these people are. But they're in plain sight. They're all around us at the top levels of society. And it's only thanks to the bravery of these survivors. I spoke to Virginia. I never interviewed her. She wasn't allowed. She said her lawyer wouldn't let me interview her. But it's the bravery of these women that have brought this out and continue to lobby and campaign to this day, because Trump now has done this sweetheart deal for Ghislaine Maxwell, put her in a soft prison, probably going to release her early. She's sentenced to decades. And Virginia, she died in January, and if she could see this, because Trump never sat down with Virginia, she asked him to.
Hold on, Virginia died in January?
Yeah, she was unalive in January. The main survivor.
How?
There's many different theories of how she died. And in my opinion, after interviewing a lot of different people and a lot of different theories, my opinion, it is something called pharmacide. So with pharmacide, what you do is you increasingly put pressure on a person that drives them to take pills. Lady Victoria Hervey, I don't know if you've ever heard of her. Yeah. She's like a mouthpiece for Prince Andrew. She was trolling Virginia when Virginia got in a car crash in January, and she was in hospital, and she said her life was in danger, and there's these photos released of her battered and bruised face. But we also know now, 60 Minutes just did a documentary that went out last week in Australia, that Virginia was in a very abusive relationship with her partner. He's denying that. He's saying all the injuries she did to herself, which seems like nonsense to me. So Virginia was going through a hell of a lot. Lady Victoria Hervey was trolling her, we believe, on behalf of Prince Andrew, when she had all these injuries, which is a particularly nasty thing to do. And all this pressure was being added to Virginia. Virginia's lawyer, who went on Piers Morgan, said that there were big-time people having dark ops and campaigns against Virginia who were part of the network. He said that on Piers Morgan. So all this pressure is rising on Virginia. She's on pills. She's got kidney damage. She's on all kinds of pills, and she increased the dosages to the point where she was no longer alive. So I believe those people who are putting the pressure on are responsible. But when someone dies like that, they just say, that she died from taking these pills. There's nothing to see here. Move on.
How old was she when Prince Andrew was alleged to have a relationship with her?
Right. So you've got 3 different legal jurisdictions. So when she was in the UK, I believe she was 16. But in the other jurisdictions, I think the age of consent was higher. And he's paid over 10 million to her to keep her quiet.
Prince Andrew has?
Yeah, the lawsuit was settled because he was facing possibly getting criminally indicted in America, and there's still a call for that now.
Which would mean what?
If he stepped foot on American soil and he's got a criminal indictment outstanding, he would get, well, first he would be brought in for questioning.
Yeah.
And then he would have a case. And if he was convicted of one of these crimes, as you know from my previous interview with you, Dodge, the AB, the neo-Nazi gang, the Aryan Brotherhood, runs the white race in American prison. Yeah. And these guys have KOS for people who've got that nature of offence, kill on sight.
Yeah.
So convict justice is such, anything could happen to these people.
My God.
Yeah.
So where's Prince Andrew today then?
The Queen's favourite son is, kicking it in London with Fergie, and Fergie was just brought into this mix as well within the last 2 days. So not only is the Epstein story burning brighter than it ever has in America and burning Trump's political house down, it's also spread over to the UK. So Mandelson.
Peter Mandelson.
Yeah.
And what was he before he just got the sack?
So Mandelson was the envoy who was going to receive Trump when he arrived in England. Trump, who the Farmer sisters, Maria Farmer, has alleged was with Epstein one night and looked at her up and down, and Jeffrey Epstein said to Trump, "No, he's not for you. She's not for you." And bear in mind, Trump had a relationship with Epstein that lasted over 10 years. They were gallivanting. There's photos of them together doing all kinds of stuff. And they only fell out over a property deal. And it was from Mar-a-Lago, where Virginia worked, that Trump ran and owned, that Epstein was procuring girls. That's how he managed to get his clutches on Virginia. Through Ghislaine. Ghislaine offered Virginia a job working for Epstein. That's how they sucked them in. They said, we've got this wealthy guy, easy money, $200 massage. And once they get him in that massage room, then it steps up to other things.
What was his work? What was Epstein's work? What was he known for? Because he was a super wealthy man with networks all over across UK and America, and people used to fly out to his island and he would put parties on for them, right?
Right, so you've got the trajectory of his, where did he get this money from, and how did he rise to prominence, which is extremely suspicious in itself. So he became a school teacher at the Dalton School in New York, which is an elite school. And the guy who brought him in, I'll call him Barr Senior. So Barr Senior had written a book, a science fiction book, about an elite society where they trafficked young people and held them as sex slaves and brutalized them. It's almost like a blueprint for what Jeffrey
was about to do.
For what he was about to do. So Jeffrey gets brought in by Barr Senior. He's now got access to kids. There's parental complaints. He gets removed from that school. Barr Senior got removed from that school as well. But this is a big political family that's part of the network. Yeah. The Barrs, William Barr, etc. And then he moves on to other fraudulent enterprises whereby he parlays the wealth from that when he should be going to prison. So, for example, one of them was a company called Tower Financial. And he's got this business partner who I was about to interview, who got unalived. The business partner, him and Jeffrey both defrauded, multi-millions through this company. The business partner goes and does the huge prison sentence, and Jeffrey gets off scot-free. There's this pattern of him getting off scot-free through everything that he does.
So who's he got in his pocket then? Who's Epstein got in his pocket to get away with all this for all these years? Before he gets banged up in 2019.
All right, so if you're looking at the rise of Jeffrey and his partnership with Ghislaine Maxwell, you've got to go back and look at the network established by Ghislaine Maxwell's father.
So Ghislaine Maxwell's the daughter of Robert Maxwell?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, and Robert Maxwell was...
So when I was growing up, he was the owner of the Daily Mirror.
That's right.
And he was beefing with Rupert Murdoch all the time. There was these like titans of the media industry. But if the research we've done now, looking at Maxwell, he could sit down with, Prime Minister Thatcher. He could sit down with Gorbachev. He could sit down with Reagan or Bush, whoever was in charge of Israel, etc. So he ran this. I mean, it's mind-blowing. People to this day are still trying to unravel where the pension money went and this network. Because he was dealing with organized crime in the communist countries, the Yakuza, cartels, the Colombians, as well as dealing with all of the intelligence agencies and as well as dealing with all the world's leaders. I've never come across anyone who's had such an extensive network as that.
And how did he die? Wasn't he on the back of a boat?
So there's a fantastic book called The Assassination of Robert Maxwell. I would urge people to read it. And Robert Maxwell, the Maxwell family, had a lot of tragedies happen to the kids and stuff. It's like a Greek play when you read the history of his family. But his favorite daughter, because I believe he recognized the same psychopathic traits he had. I mean, Robert Maxwell was the kind of guy, he'd go to a hotel room and he'd wipe his bum on a towel and just leave it out for the staff to clean it up instead of using toilet paper. So he I believe, recognized the same psychopathic traits in his daughter, Ghislaine, that he had. So he named his yacht that he died off the Lady Ghislaine after her.
God, okay.
So the theory is, in the assassination of Robert Maxwell, that his empire was melting down and he was in huge amounts of debt and he was putting pressure on his connections in Israel to bail him out, and he was threatening, to reveal certain things if they weren't going to help him. So the official narrative is he was having a piss off the side of the boat and he fell in.
In
the assassination of Robert Maxwell, a little dinghy comes up and they get him and they spike him in the neck and he's unalived in that way. And Ghislaine Maxwell immediately spoke to the media about what happened to her father And she said, there's just no way that happened, accidentally. He was definitely unalived by other forces. So we also interviewed a guy called Ari Ben-Menashe, who was Israeli military intelligence, who worked with Robert Maxwell and actually did some prison time under Iran-Contra in the same jail that Jeffrey was unalived in. And what Ari Ben-Menashe has told us is that when Ghislaine Maxwell went to America, the mainstream media narrative is she was, upset because her father had died, and then she met Jeffrey and he consoled her and kind of replaced this father figure in her life. That's right. What the mainstream are telling us. But what Ari Ben-Menashe is telling us is, these are hardcore spying family, the Maxwells. So Ghislaine was indoctrinated into that. Jeffrey was brought into the fold as well. And they were introduced through this spying network before she traveled to America.
So Ghislaine basically was going and getting the girls, bringing them to Jeffrey Epstein, essentially as a pimp.
Yeah, so Maxwell would tell the girls, I've got this wealthy businessman, $200-$300, come in, give him a massage, and and then it escalated into sexual things. And she was present in the room when during these escalations and encouraged them.
When was the point when the cops were like, right, we've got to bang him up? 2019, we've had all this information. And why did he end up taking his own life in such a short space of time when he was in prison?
All right, so the cops, prior to the sweetheart deal, wanted him banged up.
But the sweetheart deal was years before.
Yeah.
So how many years? Could you take a look, Dill, and let me know what year he got banged up first time? Because I want to know, he got banged up first time for how long? He would have done half the sentence. He would have got a sweetener deal.
He had a good run. Was it around 2010, I think?
I think so. But I want to know what happened between that and the next 9 years before he got banged up again.
Yeah.
He must have just been at it the whole of the 9 years. I want to know what...
He was at it even when he was in the jail doing the sweetheart deal and on the work release. There are survivors who've come forward to say this happened, and they're holding Alexander Acosta personally responsible. So Acosta, they just interviewed him last week about the sweetheart deal.
Yeah.
And you know what he said? I didn't believe the survivors, and I don't believe them. And he just had no caring or compassion at all. And that's the thing about this network. There are people in this network, normal human beings like me and you. We've got kids, and we think if anything happened to them, hell would rain down on the perpetrators. But there are people out there who've just got no qualms about doing things to kids and actually get off on it.
It makes my blood boil, Shaun. It makes my blood boil. There's people out there can do a lot of things, but do not involve kids. Do not involve kids, whatever. So.
But then there's also the people who enable them.
Yeah. But they should be banged up as well. They bang.
So Keir Starmer, right?
Yeah.
Pretending like he didn't know that Mandelson has sent a love letter to Epstein, and I'm doing the honourable thing now by firing Mandelson, and pretending. This is how they get away with it. They have a fall guy, but they know all along. Prince Andrew, we interviewed Paul Page, Royal Protection Officer. So Epstein had been convicted the first time, so he's got that on his record. The Royal Protection Police are telling Prince Andrew, you are visiting a convicted PDF file. Yeah. This is a liability. What does Prince Andrew do? Overrides their advice to keep visiting him. And then when he gets busted, he has the gall to go on the BBC and do that car crash interview and say, I was going out there to... the honourable thing to do was to break our friendship up in person. That's why I was flying out there. No, he was the guest of honour at Epstein's birthday party, and he was out there for days.
Yeah.
He just wanted more of what he was fixated on.
Why is it like, we're talking about Great Britain here, because I don't know too much about America, and I'm sure it's just as bad, but why do the government and everyone else cover everything up? Like everything to do with kids. Like we've had Maggie Oliver on.
Oh, God bless Maggie Oliver.
Maggie Oliver is an angel. If you're listening, Maggie, I know we're close. You're an angel, and everyone in the UK fully is backing you and supporting you. What she's gone for the last 15, 20 years to bring to light what she knows, and it's just coming to light now. How has this all been covered up? Why does this PDF file have gone on for years in public schools, private schools, care homes? the government covering up. Like, it's bonkers. Why is the UK allowing this? Why is there no one with a set of balls out there and coming in and going, right, you're banged up, and nick all of them? Anyone who's linked to any of that stuff. Why are we not strong like a country like that? Because anything to do with kids, there's levels, right? Like, kids is a no-go zone. Whatever happens in the world, people are mad and crazy out there. They do all sorts of stuff, but kids is a no-go zone.
All right, first of all, huge shout out to Maggie Oliver.
Yeah.
God bless that woman and God protect that woman. And we recently did a collaboration with her whereby she brought on one of the girls from the Free Girls to do a first ever interview. And that woman's got such bravery and strength as well. So salute to them.
Yeah.
In response to your question then, the politicians are just actors.
Yeah.
They've got no power. They're just clowns, basically. You got the clowns in the red clown outfits. You got the clowns in the blue clown outfit, and what David Icke described as a postage stamp size of what they're allowed to debate.
Okay.
What they hoodwink the public with to make it appear there are differences in the political parties. When it comes to any of the big issues that the network wants to enforce on the public, so what are all the things that the network loves and that make the most money off? They are war. They are, the things that happened during the pandemic. I'll just leave that at that because I don't want to get you in trouble. They are the human transportation of young people and the evil things that happen to them around the world. They are the displacement of people and the issues that have been created around that because they profit from that as well. So you will see, for example, in America right now, they're using the assassination of Charlie Kirk. They're saying the left did it, to clamp down on free speech. In the UK, they're saying that, Tommy Robinson is the extreme here. And we've got to clamp down on free speech. They're pointing at the right to clamp down on free speech. So the network everyone wants more control and to clamp down on free speech.
They just want more divide.
But it doesn't matter what political party is in power, they will find a mechanism to do it. So if they want us to go to war, they get Tony Blair to get up and say Saddam Hussein has got weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
And they made trillions off that, Dodge, the network. Trillions. Dick Cheney, who ran the company called Halliburton, for example, if a soldier ate a banana from a canteen in Iraq, American taxpayers had to pay like $20 to $50 for a banana. He made billions in government contracts. And they estimate now that over 5 million people have died from the war on terror, which was decided by George Bush and Tony Blair, got everybody into it. Over 5 million people, more than half of them women and kids.
Yeah.
Collateral damage.
So mainstream media are blocking anything that goes out there because they're in control. If it wasn't for Elon Musk, we wouldn't have free speech. Would you say that's correct?
So I would like to credit Elon Musk for bringing a lot of my colleagues back on X.
Like
Ryan Dawson, for example, who's a preeminent researcher on Epstein. I've learned some of the most from him and people like Whitney Webb, another one who's got a book out. But there's also concerns I have because the ultimate goal of the network is to have a high-tech AI control society. And David Icke has said that Elon Musk is incorporated into that side of it.
Into the network?
Yeah, into the AI side of it. He's one of the prime movers.
What are your thoughts on David Icke?
So David Icke has said a lot of wild things over the years, and some people dismiss him because of those things. But a lot of the things that people called him out for being wild at the time have actually come true.
Yes, isn't it?
He was the first one to call out Jimmy Savile.
Yeah.
And Johnny Rotten called out Jimmy Savile as well. And it was David Icke who warned us that when Trump got in and said he was going to end the wars and do this and that and the other. And, Trump did the freedom of speech thing that he signed into really helped my career security on YouTube because I'm allowed to say a lot more now.
Yeah.
But like David Icke said, it's within the postage stamp of limit of what they're allowed to do. When it comes to the big issues, keeping wars going, covering up the Epstein story, a lot of people right now who voted for Trump are really disappointed in him because it was a fundamental thing that they had proclaimed, not just Donald Trump, but also Pam Bondi, AG, the people at the top of the DOJ, Bongino, Kash Patel, top of the FBI. For months, Dodge, they were saying, the first thing we are going to do when we get voted in is release the Epstein files. We are totally against the human transportation of kids. This is our number one priority. Why are the Democrats hiding this? We're going to show you guys everything. And then when they got in, what did they say? What did Trump say? People still talking about the Epstein files? There's nothing to see here. If you're still talking about the Epstein files, this is a Democrat conspiracy. You guys are nut jobs. You need to move on. I mean, how blatant a slap in the face is that to the public? They think we are so stupid, we will just swallow their BS and move on, when they promised for months they were going to do something about it. And all the survivors' hopes were riding high on Trump. And who did Trump sit down with? Did he sit down with the survivors who've been begging for him to hear their voices? No. He sent his former criminal lawyer, who was head of the number 2 in the DOJ, to sit down with Ghislaine Maxwell. And they recorded that interview for 2 days, which I released on my channel. And shortly after that interview, Maxwell was moved to a cushy prison in Texas where they have pet programs and all this lovely stuff. And that's because Ghislaine Maxwell was an integral part of the network. Her father was an integral part of the network. And Trump has been told to protect their asset. And we also believe Trump's going to take it one step further, and Maxwell's going to either get a pardon when he's on his way out or a commutation of a sentence, and she's not going to serve the decades she was convicted to serve.
Who's got the Epstein files?
So it depends how you define the Epstein files. They are saying there are gigabytes of files held by the federal government. So let's go back and look at some of the things that the news have reported on. The news have reported on Epstein's Black Book. You may have heard of that. So Epstein's Black Book, we would actually classify it as Ghislaine Maxwell's Black Book. When they were partners in crime, he had the money and she had the connections. That's how they succeeded, bringing those two things together. So there's a guy called Nick Bryant who actually brought the Epstein files into the public domain through the media in America. We've interviewed him several times. He's another one. He's written a book about the Franklin scandal, which has got so many parallels with the Epstein case. They were giving rent boys tours of the White House and all this kind of stuff. The only people who died in the Franklin scandal was the guy, the investigator, the chief investigator, went down on a plane with his son, and the only people who went to prison in the Franklin scandal were the survivors. They criminalized them and put the survivors in prison. It was all covered up. So Nick Bryant, he brought the Epstein, the what's called the Epstein's Black Book, into the public domain. And the reason it got into the public domain is one of Epstein's employees had this book, and he'd also circled names he believed were super involved with Epstein's evil deeds. And when this Black Book originally came out, a lot of it was redacted, but I managed to get an unredacted copy back around, what was it, 2019 or 2010, and I was just calling up all the numbers in it, like Mick Jagger and people. Yeah. Live, I was live streaming, calling up the numbers. And that's one of the things that got me in trouble. But that is in the public domain, right? So you got the Black Book. You've also got what's now called the client list. So there's overlap with the names in the black book, but not everyone in the black book was the client list.
Okay.
So with this release of the Epstein files, there's been a lot of pressure to release the client list.
So how do you know the distinguish between the client list and just people in the black book?
Exactly, because there's a lot of people in the black book that have got nothing to do with the evil deeds committed by Jeffrey Epstein.
Okay.
Yeah.
But association, now those people won't want their names getting anywhere near that. Who do we know is in Epstein's black book?
The two people I would put at the top are on the cover of that book in the middle.
Prince Andrew and Bill Clinton.
So that's my book, Who Killed Epstein? And the subtitle is Prince Andrew or Bill Clinton. So if you look at Bill Clinton, Clinton flew on the Lolita Express dozens of times. On the flight logs, you see his name. You don't see any security detail with him. And you see like Ivanka and Svetlana, all these other names on the list there. So I've got a lot to say about Bill Clinton. It was Bill Clinton.
Is Bill Clinton a good man or a bad man?
I would allege that he is a serial predator of females, and I can cite the cases. And I can get to all of that. Absolute psychopath, compromised. The reason he was allowed the White House was he played ball with the bringing of the white powder in from South America with the Bush crime family and the CIA. And when he played ball with them, he parlayed that into the White House. But I can get into a lot more detail on that. So what led me to the Transportation of People Around the World network was I wrote a series of books deconstructing mass incarceration and the war on drugs. And as I'm writing about the war on drugs, and I'm writing a lot about Escobar, and I'm researching Escobar, and I actually interviewed Escobar's son.
Yeah, I remember.
And he's got a very poker face, very serious-looking guy. And the only time he cracked a smile was when I said to Juan Pablo, I said, who was the biggest drug dealer, trafficker in the 1980s? Was it your father or was it George H.W. Bush?
Is that right?
Yeah, and he laughed. He goes, George H.W. Bush. So here's how this works, right?
So who was the biggest white powder drug dealer in the 1980s in America?
George H.W. Bush. Yeah. So I've written a book also called American Made about the pilot Barry Seal, about which there was a movie called American Made, which was a complete whitewash. So they've got a beef going in South America whereby the Contras are fighting and the communists. So the communists, there's a domino theory. If the South American countries fall to communism, then next thing it's going to be knocking on our door. Mexico's going to be communist. One of the biggest profit businesses in South America is the white powder. So the more the communists acquire control of those businesses and then use that money to arm themselves, the greater is the threat to America. There's also something called the Monroe Doctrine, where if these countries start to fall to communism moving closer to America's border, America's going to take military action to prevent that. So how they justified the control of the white powder was, we can't allow this to fall into the hands of the communists. It's in the interest of national security. We will allow it and manipulate it and help it fall into the hands of the right-wing factions that are opposed to the communists. And those right-wing factions include Klaus Barbie, the Butcher of Lyon, Nazi from World War II, killed a lot of people, who ends up fleeing to South America and running death squads. So the CIA are working with all these people. If you go back to the end of World War II, Operation Paperclip, the Russians and the Americans are fighting over the rocket scientists and the people doing the experiments on the Jews in the concentration camps. They're fighting to recruit these people because it's in the interest of the national security that they get these people first so they don't fall into the hands of the communists. So roll on years later, you've got this war going in Nicaragua and you've got the Contras and you've got Congress in America does not want to get involved in financing this war. Another foreign war, endless foreign wars. The network loves endless foreign wars. That is their biggest profit hub for the banks. So anyway, Congress has said we don't want to finance, sending money down to help fight this war. So the CIA, you've got George H.W. Bush, who was the youngest ever head of the CIA. They've got a building named after him. This is how ingrained in the CIA is. And the CIA is just an enforcement arm for the network. So they come up with a scheme whereby they will send weapons down to help these guys, but on the flights back, they'll bring the white powder and distribute that out and launder that money, and that will pay for more weapons, and that will help fight the communists. So they said to themselves, who is the most corrupt governor in the whole of the United States who we can fly these planes into?
Yeah.
Bill Clinton. That's why they chose Arkansas to fly the white powder in. So Bill Clinton agreed to do this, and he provided the state security apparatus, the state police, to protect the drug drops. And all of this was running very smoothly. Barry Seal was one of the pilots bringing it in. Terry Reid was another one. He's written a book called Compromise, if people want to do a deep dive into this. Recommend Terry Reid's book. This was all going smoothly until two young lads, teenagers, who we believe observed or interacted with a drug drop somehow, ended up found dead side by side on the train tracks. And this case is called The Boys on the Tracks. And one of them, it was Don Henry and Kevin Ives and Linda Ives, the mum, and the families. They all realised that something strange had happened because the blood, it wasn't fresh on the boys. And the Clintons had a coroner called Fahmy Malek. Now, Clinton's mum, when she was in the medical profession, a patient died, and Fahmy Malek covered it up. So he was like, him and the Clintons are like that. If anyone died in Arkansas, for example, if someone got shot in the head, he would rule that they drowned in a swimming pool or it was natural causes. That's how blatant his rulings were. So Fahmy Malek said these two kids had smoking so much of the green, they'd gone into a psychedelic trance and laid side by side on the railway tracks. And there was tarp over them, and then the train had run over them. But one of the family members worked on the trains, and they knew right away that this hadn't happened. So it all started to unwind this drug operation. But while Clinton was governor of Arkansas, there was a number of cases of women who made allegations against him when he was on these binges with the white powder that he'd committed these offences. When Trump debated Hillary Clinton, these women had signed NDAs. They couldn't speak about it, but he brought all the women to the debate. They were all lined up.
I remember.
Yeah. They were those women. So Clinton was berserk as the governor of Arkansas. His own half-brother, Roger Clinton, got arrested buying the white powder from an undercover. And he said to the undercover, some of this is for Bill. He's got a nose like a vacuum cleaner. And that cop knew, and that cop knew if he didn't take Roger's arrest public right away, it would all get covered up. So he took it public, knowing the Clintons would have to go through the judicial process. They held a crisis meeting, and they said, you know what? We can use this to our advantage. We can let Roger do a bit of time, and we can say to the public, we are not above the law. Look, our own family member is getting busted and going to prison for this.
Has Trump never exposed Clinton for this?
Yeah, he brought the girls.
Has he not exposed what you're saying?
All right, so, Jeffrey Epstein and Clinton, when Clinton was the president, Maxwell and Epstein had special backdoor access to come and see him. Trump was best buddies with Epstein for over 10 years till they fell out over a property deal. It's all the same network.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Do you think the UK is becoming a communist country?
So the network wants to keep everybody divided, whether it's by war or by civil war or whatever it is. A lot of their policy, it comes from that there's a group in America of politicians called the neocons, and their policy comes from Henry Kissinger and a guy called Brzezinski, who wrote a book called The Grand Chessboard. And Brzezinski's thing is, for example, keeping the Middle East divided and conquered, keeping the wars going, not allowing certain countries to make alliances and become more powerful than America. And they get that from the British Empire, Pax Britannia, Pax Americana. And now we've got the Anglo-American establishment. So you've got left and right kicking off against each other, but that's what they want.
Yeah.
That's how they keep control. They are manipulating the hell out of us. Starmer is just a fall guy. The public, he's at the lowest popularity of any political figure right now. But it doesn't matter to the network. We're allowed to vent on him, vent our frustration, and have him replaced. But whoever comes in,
it's just going to be another puppet.
They just maintain the exact same agenda.
How does Keir Starmer live with himself, knowing that he said like 15, 20 things that he was going to do to get into power? When he got into power, he's gone opposite to everything that he said he was going to do. How does he live with himself? How does he survive every day when everyone's just at him now going, mate, you're a blatant liar, as is everyone else around you?
So my definition of a politician is someone who says whatever they want to hear, the public wants to hear to get the votes. And when they get in, they do the complete opposite. They comply with what the network tells them to do. All they're allowed to do is within the postage stamp of debate. That's all the differences that they're allowed to make. So time and time again, Obama was the Nobel Peace Prize winner.
Yeah.
He look what he did, bombing all of the wedding parties in the Middle East, all that kind of stuff. Record amounts of collateral damage. They do the complete opposite, Dodge.
What are your thoughts on Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London?
So we're getting into politically kind of like a lightning rod right now of conflict and civil war, potential conflict in the UK.
Yeah.
Talking about him. So again, it is all part of the agenda, I believe. If we go back to the root causes of this is what nobody's ever looking at. The root causes of all this stuff that's going on, what our primary one, I believe, you got Tommy Robinson over here, you got Sadiq Khan over here, George Bush Jr. and Tony Blair. The world changed when Tony Blair made that speech.
Yeah.
Saying Saddam Hussein has got weapons of mass destruction. Yeah. He knew quite well he didn't, but they made trillions off the back of it. What happens is when you destabilize a whole area of the world like that, lo and behold, the people don't want to live there anymore.
Yeah.
If people are getting hung and beheaded, and they've lived there their entire lives, farms are getting bombed, wedding parties are getting bombed, etc. Surprise, surprise, they don't want to live there anymore. So you see huge amount of displacement and waves of immigration, but the globalists love immigration because it gives them a slave workforce.
Yeah.
My background is economics, and one of the books we had to read when we did economics was The Wealth of the Nations, Adam Smith. And we also read, Marx has got the eternal dispute between the capitalists and the landowners and the peasant class and the workers is pay. The level of pay determines how much profits the billionaires make. So if you can bring a huge slave labor workforce in from a country you've bombed the crap out of, and that suppresses wage prices, we are going to make billions and billions and billions off the back of that.
Yeah, but on that thought process, how many angered people are coming to the country now where we were bombing years ago?
Exactly. So we're bringing this slave workforce over.
They're coming in knowing that they're super angry because their granddad or dad or whatever happened to them 20 years ago.
And they know that as well because they profit from it.
So then they don't fit into our society as smoothly as they could do. And then that's just angering Londoners and angering people around the country. That's what I'm seeing.
And they're profiting from every angle. Let me expand on that. So, for example, if a migrant commits a criminal act and goes to prison, then that's £60,000 a year of taxpayers' money to Serco or G4S. And that's just one of the contractors of hundreds of prison contractors. So you've got the what they call him, the king of the migrant hotels. Is it Britannia? Look at how much money he's making.
He's guaranteeing 7 years of full hotel for 7 years up front.
Just like the private prisoners are getting paid, whether they're on the bunks or not in some of the contracts.
Yeah.
So,
Why? I always I've never really got into politics. I don't really want to go down the politics thing. But what I find hard to understand is how our country has changed so quickly.
yeah.
And how feel like it's getting more and more corrupt. And when I was younger, I used to look in like South Africa. I think, oh, it's a really corrupt country. Well, what's going on there? There's lots of violence. I'm feeling that about our own country right now, and it saddens me. It saddens me that there's not a lot of police on the streets as there used to be. It saddens me that the knife crime has gone through the roof. The RAPE crime has gone through the roof. Why? Why has this all of a sudden happened over the last 3-4 years?
So the network has found a loophole whereby they can make billions every couple of days from people who are brought in, asylum seekers, migrants, whereby they can put that money in their own pockets instead of taking care of our own homeless people, taking care of our own veterans, having people in waiting rooms to try and see a doctor. I mean, we went to the hospital with baby Z, who was sick one night. We were there for like 3 or 4 months. Yeah. We just walked out in disgust in the end. Yeah. So they found a loophole through human rights laws and stuff where they can allow these guys in, and under the law they have to give them these services, i.e. put all this money in their own pockets, but they can screw their own people over, and the public is absolutely sick of it.
Yeah.
Well, people have got to be careful. We're directing that at each other instead of the people who are above Starmer, the network, and looking at the root causes of it and stopping the root causes of it. Now, I was an immigrant to America. America was good to me. I took advantage and I got kicked out. And a healthy amount of immigration is good for an economy.
Yeah.
But what they've done is they've hyper-accelerated it to destroy British, and it's destroying British national identity.
Agreed.
And it's causing all of these crimes, because if you accelerate it to that point and you're not screening who's coming in, you're bringing in a criminal element, you're bringing in a mentally ill element. And
you don't know whether these people have been banged up for 10, 15 years for killing someone. You don't know whether they've been done for PDF stuff, or you just don't know. We don't know who they are. I don't mind immigration coming in, but illegal immigration, surely we're a strong enough country to go, no, stop. Just stop.
Imagine if the Chinese were bombing here, right? Because they wanted to steal North Sea oil.
Yeah.
And you wake up one day and your whole street's been bombed, and your family's guts are splattered on the wall. And you're just completely traumatized. And then the Chinese say to you, well, you're still alive. We can bring you over here, have a job in our country. And you get to China, and it's on the back of your mind. You're remembering your family was blown the crap out of, and you just snap one day, right? I'm gonna get
revenge.
Yeah. They know they've traumatized these people, and they're bringing them in, and they're allowing it to happen because it's this dividing society, and it gives them more control, and it enables them to make more money. And if you look at the ancient ritual side of it, they are getting off on the evil energy, the blood sacrifice of all these people that are getting killed. For example, the war in Ukraine. Years ago, Boris Johnson, they had an opportunity. There was a peace deal on the table. They had an opportunity to take it. Boris Johnson went out there and said, we've got your back, keep fighting.
Yeah.
And now there's over 1 million young people dead in Ukraine that have been blood sacrificed because Ukraine has been divided up for BlackRock and the banksters to take their minerals and just suck the life out of that country. And they're like, keep fighting. We're going to support you. The Russians are evil. Just keep going, keep going. It's national. We're supporting you as a nation. That's the front. Yeah. While they're just sucking the life out of that country and not giving a shit about all those young people.
So who's pulling the strings then behind Keir Starmer and Sadiq Khan? Who's pulling the strings there? Because they've got no accountability. The only accountability they have is when Donald Trump flies over and shows them up and says on live TV, oh, I don't rate him and I don't like him, da-da-da-da. When Donald Trump goes away, it's like, oh, back to normal again. Carry on with the lies, carry on with the cover-up. Surely there's someone going to make these people accountable. Who do they answer to? Who are they answering to?
All right, so there's levels going up from Epstein and the politicians, etc. So how Epstein was clever, his network was clever, was they compromised the donor class. So the donor class are above the politicians. They hold the purse strings through lobbyists. I mean, lobbyists is just, just bribery. It's just bribery. So private prisons, for example, They pay tens of millions a year to both political parties to keep the contracts rolling. So whoever gets in power, and those contracts are in the tens of billions a year. So if you're receiving money from these donors, people like Bill Gates, who was compromised, his own wife outed him when they were going through the divorce fight. Bill Gates said he barely knew Epstein, just as Bill Clinton said he barely knew Epstein, just as Bill Richardson, governor of New Mexico, said he barely knew Epstein. If you've compromised the donor class, when it comes to being pressured to release the Epstein files, and the donor class are in the Epstein files, you ain't releasing it, whether you're Trump or you're, what's his name, Biden?
Yeah.
So the donor class is above the politicians, the money, but these also are intermediaries for these people. And these people, you go into now, the wealthiest owners of companies, people who own the banks, people who own the military industrial complex, people who own big oil, people who own big pharma. That's the level you're going at to now.
Yeah.
And these people kick it. You hear about secret societies, Bohemian Grove. We've interviewed people who've been to these places and researched them, etc. They all get together and do these rituals.
So who killed Jeffrey Epstein?
All right, so let's look at this in a lot more detail, shall we? So we've also recently interviewed Mark Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein's brother, and he's got a lot of thoughts on this. He helped us. So Epstein's incarcerated now, second time, right? He's already had the sweetheart deal the first time. So initially he's going to think, when one of these guys get arrested, I think I said this at the very beginning, originally the network will rally around them and protect them and get it covered up. But there can become a crossover point whereby they can't do that any longer and they've got to eliminate the person. For example, with Jimmy Savile, they managed to protect him until he wasn't even alive anymore. They protected him throughout his entire
How on earth Jimmy Savile didn't get banged up, do not know.
We can get to that in a minute.
Yeah, 100%
details on that.
Yeah.
So Epstein gets arrested the second time. He's just come in from France. He gets arrested at the airport. And he's thinking, I've got all this money. I can have a dream team of lawyers again and get another sweetheart deal. He thinks he's going to get some play. So he gets incarcerated and he's got motions going through that he thinks he's going to get released on. In the meantime, a decision has already been made that this guy is a liability now and he's got to go. But how are we going to get rid of him when he's he's locked down, in this prison, and they've got these cameras and they've got these guards doing these security walks, etc.
So wasn't he on like 24/7 guard watch?
So he was in. I'll call it the unalive watch, where people unalive themselves because they don't like the S word on YouTube. Okay. They really hate that word.
Okay.
And first off, they put a cellmate in with him called Nicholas Tartaglione, who was a cop who'd murdered a bunch of people in a deal gone bad. He was like a rogue cop. And if you look at a photo of this guy, if you're going to put a photo in this podcast, I mean, this guy looks like he would just snap you.
Yeah.
He's like really tough, strong guy. So Epstein goes to a meeting with his lawyer and he's got bruises and stuff. And he tells his lawyer that Tartaglione attempted to do something to him. So what we believe is that Tartaglione, because there's an area where law and criminals coexist, and he's the perfect crossover, that ex-cop gone bad dealing with the cartels. We believe there was a quid pro quo where Tartaglione, who was up for the death penalty, was given a reprieve from the death penalty to end Jeffrey, but that didn't work. So he's already told his lawyer that there was an attempt on his life. Yeah. Anyway, he's still got these motions going through. His lawyer says, Jeffrey's hopeful that he's going to get out. Jeffrey's throwing money around. He's getting, buying guards off, buying prisoners off to get soft treatment, etc. And he's in good spirits. He still thinks he's going to get released. But then we look at the night of his unalivement. So that jail was constructed in the 1970s, and there's no record in the history of that jail where two guards have fallen asleep simultaneously on the same night.
Yeah.
The cameras, they told us that the cameras were shut off, right? For 5 or 6 years now, we have been told the cameras were shut off. And then just the other week, they released the footage but there was at least a minute missing just before midnight or something like that. This is how crazy the whole situation is. Mark Epstein, who we recently interviewed, the brother, he brought in a coroner, Baden, who made it public that the way the injuries that were sustained, the fractures to the hyoid, had multiple fractures, were indicative of homicidal strangulation and not self-unalivement strangulation. So, one of the reasons I got onto this story is because shortly after that happened, I'd been researching the hell out of Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. I knew how evil she was as well. We can get to that if you want. And everybody was, because I was primarily a prison channel at the time. Yeah. So everyone was like, do a video on what's going to happen to Epstein, do a video. And I did a video, and I think it was called Will Clinton, I'll use the S word, unalive Jeffrey Epstein to cover up Lolita scandal. And then when he was unalived, the channel just went bonkers. We became like the go-to channel. Yeah. And then I ended up losing it 2 times over this coverage. But yeah, I instinctively knew right away that Bill Clinton, because your question was who's at the top of the Epstein list, Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew, they've got the most to lose, haven't they, if this ever came out?
So Prince Andrew today, wandering around the UK, knowing this in the back of his mind, if this ever comes out, he could get sent to America and could get banged up, and then he's gone. All right, so you asked...
Sorry to interrupt, guys. This just came from Sky News just now.
What is that?
Do you want to read it out loud? That's it.
Oh my God. This has just come through on Sky News now. Sarah, Duchess of York, has been dropped as the patron of a children's hospice after it has emerged. She sent an email apologising to PDF file financier Jeffrey Epstein for publicly disowning him. My God. The charity Julia's House said in a statement following the information shared this weekend with the Duchess of York's correspondence with Jeffrey Epstein, Julia's House has taken the decision that it would be inappropriate for her to continue as a patron of the charity. Wow. She said in the message that he was a steadfast, generous and supreme friend to her. Her spokesman has said since she only wrote the note because Epstein had threatened to sue her. My God. There's loads more on there.
So you've got not just the PDF files.
Yeah.
You've got the enablers.
Yeah, enablers. And they're...
So she knew that he was already convicted the first time of these horrific crimes against kids.
Yeah.
But she was gushing all over him.
Why?
Just like Mandelson was gushing all over him.
Why?
Because it is not a priority in their lives, the welfare of kids. Some of them don't care, and some of them get off on it. That's how sick these people are. It's an inversion.
How are we allowing this to happen?
Because they've got all the power.
Yeah, but how are we allowing... When I see stuff like this and I see someone gets banged up for 15 years for a bank robbery, and then someone will get 2 years for PDF files, and they'll be released after a year, and when they're released they can change their name and go and live a happy life, carry on. How are we allowing that? It just doesn't balance. Surely there must be people strong enough to fight against it. Surely there's people in the House of Commons that say, no, PDF files, they're getting 20 years. They're getting 30 years. Why is it so lenient to something so horrendous?
Every political party that gets in power in this country says they're going to do something about the grooming gangs. And one thing Maggie Oliver taught us is they all say it.
Nothing happens.
Exactly. But
why?
The politicians don't care. The welfare of kids is not a priority for them. You think that the most disgusting act that traumatizes kids and changes the trajectory of their lives and can create all kinds of mayhem in society and is a root cause of crime will be addressed. But they don't address it. They just allow it to happen. Not only that, they harbour them and they allow it to flourish. Let's take, for example, the Catholic Church. I was a Catholic. I was raised an altar boy, etc. The Catholic Church harbours one of the biggest PDF file rings in the world. You've got people joining the Catholic priesthood who are PDFs because they know if they get busted, the Catholic Church is going to get the high-priced lawyers to protect them and just move them 20, 30 miles to a different diocese, and it'll just happen again. Or if they get busted too many times in one country, they just move them to Africa and it happens again. It's not a priority. If you look at the people at the top of the Vatican, they don't care about this. They allow it to flourish. The people at the top of politics, they don't care. They allow it to flourish.
My God. What happened in the mainstream media in the UK when someone like Keir Starmer has the 3 Ukrainian rent boys, one petrol bomb his car and go for his house? What happened in there? Why has that all gone silent all of a sudden?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, because we did a lot of coverage on that at the time. We interviewed a lot of people about it. And the feedback I got was probably a D notice was served.
Which means?
That the mainstream media are told that you could get in some kinds of legal trouble if it comes from intelligence, MI5, whatever. You could get in some kinds of legal trouble down the road. Publish this at your peril, basically. So what happened there was you've got separate occasions. You've got 2 separate properties and a car have been set on fire. And then you start to, and on separate occasions, and you start to see these kids get arrested.
Yeah.
I mean, they look like junior Gary Glitters.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like criminal, thug, arsonist type people at all. So we were
from Ukraine?
Yeah.
Living in London?
Yeah. So we're like, what the hell is going on here? We need to do a much deeper dive on this. So what we found out was that they had like Grindr accounts, possibly been on adult work at some point with profiles, and they're under the auspices of being male models, that kind of a thing. But the people we interviewed were alleging that they were full-on male escorts. So how do 3 male escorts know to target different Starmer properties and a car?
Yeah.
And why is this not being explained to the public if these guys have been arrested and been interrogated? It's all just completely brushed under the carpet. So anyway, one of the theories is that, like Boris Johnson kept the war going. He was told by the network to keep the war going in Ukraine, blood sacrifice, the entire public have claimed we don't care. They can all die for all we care as long as we're making our monies. That there's possible pressure on Starmer, because if you look at how gung-ho Starmer is, he was slobbering all over Biden's leg.
Yeah.
Let's get long-range missiles fired into Russia. Let's escalate with Russia.
Yeah.
Like, do we want world war with Russia? No. We do not. Yeah. That Starmer's in a similar position whereby he's being compromised, allegedly, you've got to be careful, from multiple angles. And one of those angles could possibly be dalliances with teenage Ukrainian male models. And you asked earlier, why doesn't Starmer care or do anything about these things? Have you looked at his eyes?
Yeah.
It's
just glazed over,
Do you see a soul there?
No, not at all.
Exactly.
And he's in charge of our country. He's a leader of our country.
Well, he's the clown who's the puppet who's in...
He's the front man.
The front man, yeah.
I just find it all so odd. It's only this last year I've really paid attention to have a look at how the whole thing's working.
Yeah.
Because you're seeing the country going downhill very, very quickly, and it's affecting businesses, it's affecting people all around us.
And that's because the internet is allowing us to put out this independent research, and people are waking up at a record level. Yeah. If you go back to the era of Savile, look how protected he was. He couldn't have got away with it in this internet era. I mean, he could go and hang out with Thatcher at Chequers and have a jolly old time. He had a papal knighthood.
What
from the Pope.
Yeah.
Knighted by the Pope.
He got knighted?
By the Pope. Got knighted by the Queen. He could sit down with the leaders of Israel, of America, of the UK. He could go and do anything he wanted. He could waltz into Buckingham Palace. Lord Mountbatten brought him into Buckingham Palace, into the royal fold. Do you know anything about...
No.
All right, so Lord Mountbatten was King Charles's mentor. And there's a guy who'd be...
Is he still with us today?
No.
No, okay.
He was unalived in an explosion on his boat off Ireland. And they believe because of what he was doing to boys, there's a theory, what he was doing to boys was what was responsible and why he didn't have a full security detail because of what he was doing to boys. So there's a guy called Andrew Loney, I would highly recommend you getting him on your podcast. He's just got a book out recently exposing Prince Andrew. He's single-handedly destroying Prince Andrew right now. He's all over the media. And he's as part of a series of books. And one of his earlier books was exposing the Mountbattens and their deviant behaviour. And one of the things that Lord Mountbatten is alleged to have done, there's a home in Ireland called the Kincora Boys' Home. And Tim Keir is one of the survivors in Kincora. And he didn't allege anything about Mountbatten. But Tim Keir, I was crying when I was watching him get interviewed on the TV. The horrific things that happened to him at Kincora's boys' home, where they would just take the boys and, prominent political figures would take them to hotel rooms, do these brutal things to them, and they'd just be taken back. And some of these boys were unalived as well.
Fucking mate, yeah. Honestly, Shaun, listening to this makes my blood boil.
So Tim Keir right now...
on earth this was even allowed?
Tim Keir right now has got a huge legal case, right? And we ask him, how was this allowed? And this was justified because MI5 and the British Empire, MI6, whatever, there was negotiations going on with Ireland at the time. You got the terrorism and all the trouble and all this kind of stuff. So by compromising figures they could lean on in these negotiations, by getting them in these positions with these boys, they could use this leverage over them to further the national interests, security interests of the British Empire. That's how they justify it. These kids are just sacrificial lambs in the interest of national security. They're from Keir homes. They haven't got parents. There's, nobody cares about them.
Yeah.
So they've been thrown away by society. Yeah. There's never going to be any comeback from these kids. In fact, we could snuff them out and no one will even know.
Yeah.
And that does happen. So anyway, Mountbatten brings Savile into the royal fold. He's King Charles's mentor at the time. And he's the one who told Charles, go and sow your wild oats. Don't get tied down. But he had a deviant relationship with his own wife. They were like swingers. American intelligence documented that they were swingers. But he won all these military awards, all esteemed, Mountbatten, military genius, all this claptrap. And in the end, he ends up getting unalived off his boat in Ireland. But he's already done the damage, bringing Jimmy Savile into the royal fold. So Jimmy Savile could waltz into Buckingham Palace and just crack jokes. And like Paul Page told us with Prince Andrew and Epstein, they know the full background of these people. Yeah. They don't care. They know they can also cover it up if anything comes out. So Savile was so brazen. There's a story whereby he was in his Rolls Royce with a girl sat next to him. A cop knocks on the window. And the cop looks in and says, "Everyone all right? Oh, Jimmy, what are you guys doing?" And Jimmy's like, "On your bike. She turns 16 at midnight and we're going to party." That kind of thing. And if you say anything, I'll have you tossed out of the force. And this cop's disgusted. He goes back to the police force and he says, "I just, stumbled upon Jimmy Savile in his bloody Rolls Royce with an underage girl." And they're all shaking their heads. "You report anything about Jimmy Savile, all our jobs will be on the line. They'll come down on us like a ton of bricks. You can't say anything about that guy." So Jimmy Savile was extremely smart, high IQ, psychopathic, deviant. His career trajectory, he was like a miracle baby that survived this strange... I think he had a bang on the head and his eyes wouldn't close for 2 years and they thought he was going to die. So he got special treatment from his family. You're this miracle child, you've survived this. They sent him down the mines during the war. And he realised that, magic and things like that, magic tricks, he would go down the mines and come up dressed with no soot on him. And he saw the effect that had on people. Then he became a DJ. He had interest in nightclubs. Bouncers. You saw it in the Louis Theroux interview where he talks about having a guy tied up downstairs. Louis Theroux is looking at him.
That was an odd interview, wasn't it?
Yeah. So Savile is just a DJ in the North. How do you go from being a DJ in the North to brokering deals for global powers, being able to waltz into Buckingham Palace? So we believe from our research that Savile was procuring kids to elites, including royal family members. That's how he got away with it. There's an interview with a kid whereby a kid has run away, a Savile family member, to London. And the kid ends up, Jimmy stumbles upon him and he's like, oh, Jimmy's found me, he's going to take me home. And Jimmy takes him to a house where the PDF files are having parties with kids. But he makes sure nothing happens to that kid. But he knew then from his own inside, from being a family member, that Jimmy was part of the network. Jimmy's own family member said Jimmy was part of this network. And this network goes way, 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 way high.
So you're telling me there's no paperwork gone on anyone's desk at the Crown Prosecution Services to say, right, this is what Jimmy Savile's been up to, and that's all just been ripped up and put under the carpet? Who's in charge of that? Someone must.
I even know who ripped it up.
Who?
All right, let's go back then. So, Jimmy Savile had a lunch club for the cops, a weekly lunch club where the cops would come to his premises and party, sometimes with the underage girls. So the law was such back then that if Savile was reported in any jurisdiction of the UK, the protocol was you had to call it in to Leeds, where Savile was living, his local jurisdiction. So it was a member of the lunch club that received the inbound complaint, that ripped the complaints up. That's how he had it locked down.
So there must be, what about lawyers getting involved in this? There must be lawyers had stuff on their desks and seen that he's been accused of 500 plus incidents with young girls and boys across the country. There must be. They
nearly had him right. So towards
what year are we talking roughly here?
Just before he died.
Which was, when did he die? Dill, can you have a look for me, please, mate?
29th of October 2011.
2011.
Find out the year of his interview with the Surrey Police Force.
Between 2007 and 2009.
All right, so he ends up getting called in to interview with the Surrey Police. Yeah. And he sets the terms. They have to come to him, and he's got some people present with him, and 2 female cops come. And they're talking about the allegations against him. And from the get-go, he's just like running the whole interview. And they're like, Mr. Savile, this, you can just see that they've not sent like their top interrogators. It's already been sweetheart dealed. But by the end of it, they're trying to like put a bit more pressure on him. And he's like, I'm quick to the Old Bailey. I've got my legal counsel and I just love suing people. So you asked about lawyers.
Yeah.
He's the one with the army of lawyers scurrying the living daylights out of the survivors and any journalists who dare to report on these monstrous behaviours that went on for decades.
Imagine you being the lawyer knowing that you're going to cover up for him. Do you not think that lawyer should get banged up?
There's more of the PDF file enablers in the higher echelons of society than there are the PDF.
So who are these people? These enablers then? They must be linked.
They are the lawyers, they're the politicians, they're everybody. Thatcher knew. She's an enabler. People knew about Prince Andrew and his cohorts knew. Fergie knew. She's just been outed. She's an enabler. And that's why that news has just come in today.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't want this stuff released, Dodge, because more and more dominoes are going to fall.
So there's no consequences for any enablers right now?
There's no consequences for any of them.
For anyone?
You become a liability, we will give you a pass. But if you become too much of a liability, we will unalive you. Savile was protected throughout his entire decades. They didn't unalive him. He got a Masonic burial with his coffin at 33 degrees, facing the sea. All the Freemasons there, which are part of the secret society, which is utilised by the network.
You couldn't write this. You couldn't write it.
Oh.
So where's Keir Starmer's involvement with Jimmy Savile?
So Keir Starmer was head of CPS when they were trying to push stuff against Savile. And Keir Starmer, he's saying that he didn't even know the case existed at the time. Just like Boris Johnson, who enabled over a million Ukrainians to die by scuppering the peace deal, is saying he didn't scupper it. It was neo-Nazis in Ukraine putting pressure on Ukraine to keep the war going. It wasn't him. They've all got an excuse, Dodge.
So what's the way forward then if the Conservatives are lying and the Labour are lying and it's just a two-horse race. And now you've got reform coming in. Will reform be the same, or will reform rip everything up and go, right, this is what we're doing, and we will not be controlled by the upper echelons of the society?
All right, so within the postage stamp dimension of what we're allowed to change and debate, any party that is allowed to get in, for example, at the edge of that, reform's going to come in and kick out migrants or whatever, but that agenda's already been served. By then, they've already got the what is it they want now? The ID cards and the AI control and all that. They're gonna that they'll be pushing that
more control.
So once an agenda has been fulfilled, for example, the war on Iraq, after that, then Tony Blair can become a war criminal in the eyes of the public. They don't care. The banksters have already made their money from that play. Sadly, whoever gets in gets co-opted. And that's the thing with the Charlie Kirk story that's huge news right now as well. Because I've watched...
Who shot Charlie Kirk?
So I've watched... we had Ryan Dawson on yesterday, and he's really good on these things. And he does believe that the patsy... what's his name? The guy who did it. Either... did it as a lone wolf inspired by an online group or is part of a conspiracy. But he does believe he is a shooter, or at least one of the shooters. Ryan Dawson believes he is the shooter. So if you look at the career...
Who shot Charlie Kirk?
Ryan Dawson believes that... What was the guy's name? Tyler. Yeah. Tyler shot Charlie Kirk. Yeah. And Ryan Dawson's pretty accurate with stuff. But was it a conspiracy or was it a lone wolf thing? Was he radicalized by an online group? Did intelligence infiltrate an online group that was part of the network? You could be a lone wolf, but the network can reach out to you online these days. Yeah. You saw JFK, his patsy had to be radicalized in person, but these days they can just do it online. And Charlie Kirk, I looked at all the stuff that Candace Owens is doing on him. And she's got videos of Charlie Kirk, in his 20s, dancing to Kanye with his sneakers on, asking Candace, does he look cool? And he just strikes me as a naive, idealistic person that would be ideal for the network to utilize. And he was repeating a lot of the things that Trump mantras, which the network allowed Trump to repeat. But what Candace is alleging is that in more recent months, so Charlie Kirk took a lot of money, millions, from the donor class, and the donor class had certain vested interests, keep the war in Ukraine going, etc. The things with Israel and Palestine, etc. Certain agendas there, and Charlie Kirk was turning against that, and actually said to Trump when he visited Trump at the White House in one of his most recent conversations, it was a bad idea to bomb Iran for Israel, and was starting to interview people like Tucker Carlson at these events, which went against what the vested interests wanted, so that there's a possible motive, because he had so many followers. If he was having a change of heart politically, if he was having this awakening, to get him out of the way. That's a theory that Candace Owens is putting forward.
Who tried to assassinate Donald Trump?
That's a good one as well, because people are saying now they're mad at him for Epstein and saying that he's covering up the Epstein files. It's so blatant. But the people who still support Trump are saying, well, if the deep state tried to kill Trump, why would he be protecting the Epstein files, which is in the interest of the deep state? So it's complex, isn't it? My theory is that the interests of the deep state, the network, would have been better served by Biden, who was basically getting run by the Clintons and the Obama interests. We could be very well at war with Russia right now. It could be encompassing Europe, and these bankers high up in that network will be making way more money than they're making right now. Trump said he was going to end those wars right away. But Hillary Clinton, gosh, she was just gung-ho to have full-on nuclear war with Russia. These people are insane. They've got these bunkers, like this Zuckerberg bunker in Hawaii, that they actually think us, the cattle, can all be sacrificed in nuclear war. They can go down to the bunkers, come back up. The whole world is depopulated now, and they're just going to live happily ever after in the high-tech AI world and have the whole world to themselves. It's madness.
Do you think we're safe in the UK?
No, because you can feel it. It's palpable here right now, isn't it? I mean, we moved from near London to a more countryside town a couple of years ago because we could just feel the vibe changing. We've just had a baby. We don't want to raise a baby where it's getting more risky like this. And the globalist interests, all the list of things that I cited that they love, we're feeling the consequences of that in this country. It's getting more dangerous by the day. And if you look at what the riots in France right now, and if you look, is it Sweden where there's bombs going off nearly every day? And Germany?
That's Sweden. Sweden, we all knew Sweden as this beautiful, everyone was there, blonde, nice, calm, people used to go skiing, it was nice, relaxing. All of a sudden they've been massively taken over and things, all sorts of stuff going on there. Sweden, for Christ's sake.
They're homogenizing society with the end goal of just having this slave, Hunger Games, worker ant people who'll just be controlled through AI and controlled through high tech. But now we're seeing them accelerate it. We're pushing back against it in this country. But how many more years is Starmer in power for? Or whoever replaces him from the Labour Party?
He's got another 1,000 days. 3 years. No one can get him out, can they?
My dad is hardcore Labour. He's, Arthur Scargill, going back to the miners' strike, Maggie Thatcher, all that stuff. And I never thought I would see the day when my father talked bad about a Labour leader. And it's got to that point now. And if you look at the polls, what is it, like 10% of the public or something like that trust politicians or trust the mainstream media? The mainstream media is a major weapon of the network because you've got 7 ginormous corporations controlling the mainstream media.
Which are?
And they just deliver.
What are the 7?
Last time I was in an interview, the guy actually pulled them all up. I can't remember all off the top of my head.
A couple.
I think Disney's in there, Warner Brothers, whoever owns CNN, all these networks, etc. And you saw, whenever you see those mainstream pundits parroting the same thing over and over again, Saddam Hussein's got weapons. Saddam Hussein's got weapons. You know that the complete opposite is probably true, and just that the agenda is in play.
Ghislaine Maxwell, do you think she'll be released?
I think she won't serve the full term because my early prediction was that when the media heat dies down, because they want to make an example out of them when they first get convicted because the media heat is on, give them 20, 30 years. But when the media are not looking at it...
Drifts away, they can slip through.
They get Bill Cosby'd out. Hand over some backsheesh to a high court appeal judge, get some technicality. And the lawyer who was working on the case for Bill Cosby, as he even said, they're going to use the exact same technicality they got Cosby out with to get Maxwell out with. But it's behind the scenes. Someone's been paid off.
Wow. Shaun, I found this fascinating.
Thank you.
Fascinating. You've properly done your homework on this, haven't you?
Read a few books. Written a few
You've
books.
written How many books have you written in total? I've got one here. Who Killed Epstein? Prince Andrew or Bill Clinton?
I've written 17.
War on Drugs, Book 5, Shaun Attwood. I've got one here. Untouchable, Jimmy Savile. What's the other one?
That's my life. If you make my
latest one.
You make my publisher happy if you say that.
Let's go. Sit downs with serial killers and murderers. Conversations with the world's most dangerous killers. Shaun Attwood.
That's the new one. Yeah.
Is that which is your favourite book of the whole 17?
Oh my goodness! I think Clinton, Bush, and CIA conspiracies. If you're into this stuff. In terms of my life trilogy, it's Party Time, Hard Time, Prison Time, probably Party Time. All the crazy stuff I did is up there as well. I spent a lot of time on that one.
Yeah. Anyone out there, Shaun's got a massive YouTube channel. Where can people find you?
If you would be so kind as to put the link in your description box on YouTube.
No problem.
I've got a link tree now that's got to all my links on my channel. That'd be great. And a huge thank you. We went over 1 million subscribers recently. Huge thank you to all the people who've subscribed and supported us going back to 2007 when we started on YouTube.
Fair play to me.
Yeah.
Mate, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, man.
Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Next one.
Cheers, Sean.
Cheers.
Cheers,
Yeah.
mate. Thanks for watching, guys. If you'd like to see someone on the show, leave a comment below. And if you haven't already, do us a favour, show us a bit of love, press the subscribe button, and it allows us to grow the show even bigger and bigger each week. Nice one.